And in the blue corner, Mrs. Grumman and her whole family!
I have a 96-year-old grandmother. She has a kind of Holocaust past, so she beat death at 16 and then she beat death again. She's just beaten death at all these points. So then to come to terms with the fact that she's going to die is very disappointing. I did a kind of broad write, really, about this idea of death as a wrestler. That's kind of what happens. It was this idea, because so many people fight death. So I was thinking, well, okay, so it's a wrestling match. So I kind of already had a broad idea for it. And then I met Dr. Fliss Murtagh.
Rachel and I had conversations about the relevance of waiting for people with advanced disease and quite close to the end of life. I think because we flee from difficult emotions, then people often find it very uncomfortable to stop and wait in a place which connects them with those things. And yet, if we don't do that, we are not really living to the full. And I suppose my job is about trying to ensure that people do live to the full in the short time they may have left, and that they do the things that are important for them and their families. So being in touch with waiting and giving space to all the emotions that are coming through is really critical.
Question 2. Are there specific things that you would want your loved ones to know about you?
We talked a lot about the nature of transforming someone's wait for the inevitable, and the different kinds of waiting that people do at the end of life. The kind of difference between waiting for something in the knowledge that it's going to come and waiting in uncertainty. So she just used the example of waiting for a bus. If you know that there's a counter and it says 3 minutes, you can cope with that. If you don't know how long you're waiting, it's much more difficult. And that's the kind of wait that you get towards the end of life.
So there's lots of different kinds of waiting, but it all takes on a poignancy and an immediacy and sometimes an urgency that it wouldn't have for those of us who perhaps feel we've got more time to be living or perhaps more time to be wasting.
I was a bit worried about being flippant. So there is a tension again between dealing with this flippantly in a way that means actually you're not dealing with it at all, it's just another deflection. But humour is absolutely alive and well in the podcast, so there's a kind of central narrative which is based on truth of these appointments that death keeps making with my grandmother to invite her into a wrestling ring, and the various ways that she keeps on beating him. And he's this kind of slightly Eeyore figure that he's just like, it's gonna just give up, it's gonna happen. And if I were you, I would prepare for this rather than carrying on fighting it. So yeah, I think there's an invitation to the listener to have a think about how they want to cope with their own death and with the death of people that they love.